I've said this before, but minding my own business, walking around the house, feeding the cats, and I duck in this room, and there's this guy just sitting there going, "Okay, when's he gonna come? When's he gonna recognize me?"
When's he gonna recognize me? After I'm walking around feeding my horses and my cat. So, good morning, brother. How are
Good
you?
morning. This is Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. We're the Elder Council. I working on taking all these conversations and turning them into a book, my friend.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, we've talked about that some, but let's talk about it so that all the men watching this or all the people watching this get a little
I
sense.
think that it was suggested 8 episodes in that this is worthy of a book, and um, I write, but I'm not a book writer. Never had it in me to write a book. If anything, it would have been a cookbook, but I just have not done it. And we have inadvertently created a bunch of content through these conversations. So
Hmm.
I'm working online to find some people who can transcribe, and then you have a friend who can help us make sense of it. There's a term I'm going to guess you've not heard, but maybe you have. It's called information architecture.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. And so when it's it comes from technical term in the sense that we have a bunch of information, true, and
Hmm.
we need a designer, and designer in the sense of an architect who I don't know if you've known any architects, but I have lots of architect friends, and I'll say the one thing I love a lot about you, but the one thing I love is you see the thing that's not there
Hmm.
in a way that you can see it from big to small, and you can tell what kind of molding they're going to need, as well as where the window needs to be so it can get the perfect view of the mountain. um,
Right on.
so we'll need a little information architecture to help. How do we
Hmm.
sort all of
Yeah,
these
how do we
interesting,
sort it and put it all
right?
together?
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Sure.
going to be a fun project for the fall, and so stay tuned. We'll have books ready for everyone. So it's interesting and daunting in a very exciting way, and fun to do. However, very
However,
different than what I want to talk about today. There's a
y-
thing
y-
called, yes, sorry.
no, I was just going to say that I'm also very excited about putting this together and want to, find time to dig through all of this and find a way to get all this information out in one place
Oh
for
yeah,
people.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's a big deal.
I'm even thinking of finding an illustrator who can put pictures around these ideas as well. So that'll be really interesting.
I already have one.
Perfect. See how it works.
So
The universe delivered just like that, ladies and
they,
gentlemen. That's
yes,
how it goes.
my friend who is going to help on some of this is one of the best artists I've ever
Hmm,
known.
even
He
better.
is
Even better.
unbelievably talented.
So today, I've been thinking about this for a while. I was at a TED University in 2005, and TED University back in the day, they don't do it anymore, was Chris knew that people were coming to Monterey ahead of the show. So you would be there probably 2 days ahead, and you'd have a whole day because you wanted to hang out with friends, but there were no formal activities. So he sent a letter out, and he said, if you have something you would like to teach to the rest of the Tedsters, submit your idea, because there'll be a full day of, like hour-long classes,
Hmm.
probably 6 at a time, so you can pick and choose and have it all day long and be fun. Kimberly did a board breaking workshop that I helped her with, and she tells a story about it, which is a very fun story. but it's that kind of thing. But there was a guy
Mhm.
there named David Rose who taught this idea, which I want to talk about today, which is how he posits that everybody should have a personal board of directors.
Mm.
And he spent, 45 minutes or so making the point. I don't remember any of that other than the title. And I've thought about that and used that my whole life because I come from the business side, right? Where
Mhm.
in a company you have a board of directors, you have investors, people want a voice at the table. And here's where it's different. In when you're building a board, y- y- part of taking the money from someone is they're going to want a board seat or they don't, but they want a voice. They want a seat at the
Mhm.
table. Let's say they
Right.
metaphorically they want a seat at the table, right? When you have this personal board of directors, it is more of an invite only thing. I want someone
Mhm.
there who um, uh, can hold me accountable by choice, right? I want that by so it's not your significant other, it's people who love you and want you to succeed. So with that being kind of set the table for that idea, because this is not something that people tend to do. And we're elders, right? So part of what I've been thinking about is should there be an elder in a lot of these situations, like in tech companies? Is there an elder, not
Mm.
as an employee, but is there an elder on call or who you can go have?
An
Yeah,
EOC.
well, yeah, yes, God, I love it. I'm done. I'm taking that. Um, it's the vision in my life is the the archetype that we're in right now. We're past our warrior stage, past all those. We're in the sage stage, right?
Mhm.
And not super comfortable with that word, but I we all understand the meaning. So I think
Mhm.
of Obi-Wan and I think of Gandalf.
Mm.
And I also think of Merlin because I'm a very big Merlin guy. Have been since I was 20. Um, so I feel like I'm at a stage in life where I've lived into that, right?
Mhm.
So I want to be that. But today's conversation is about how would we find those people? And I'm going to give you four, and then I'm going to shut up. There's four criteria that I would purport when you're building your board you want to pay attention to.
Okay.
Wealth. So that's an easy one. When we're building a business board, someone has connections to money, right?
Mhm.
So that's probably not a bad idea to have anyway, right? To have someone who can help you think about money in a way, right?
Mhm.
Wealth, wit, this,
Mhm.
right? Being able to laugh and that kind of thing is so important. Wisdom, right? That's I think the elderness of it. Is that a
Mhm.
word, elderness? It is now.
It is
Oh,
now.
it is now. And then the fourth one is work. So an example, I was on the board of the Santa Barbara Film Festival for 20 years until we voted in term limits. And as we would look for new board members, I was the one who said, here's the four W's, pick two. If you can get three, it's awesome. So you might get wisdom, wit, and work because that person will sit on committees because you need to develop. You run a board, with the fire department, right? So,
Mhm.
what are you getting of those
Mhm.
from each person? You want three from each person. So as we think about building a personal board of directors, and this is a more than finding a mentor, which is hard in itself.
Mhm.
But do you have some people in your life, and it's not like you're going to all get together in a board meeting. That doesn't happen. but the concept of accountability that, in my mind, when I go to do something here, and I'll shut up. If I'm going to go do something that's maybe wouldn't reflect well on me if someone knew I was doing it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A little watcher goes on and said, what would the board say if they were watching you do this right now? And invariably, I do not do that thing.
Do you not do that thing because you would be concerned about what the board would say, or the board would say, don't do it?
I'm practicing the fourth tenet of self-control.
Got
But
it.
sometimes you need a little push.
That would be true.
Right? You need a little push, and you go, I wouldn't want to have to defend this in the court of public opinion.
Right. Well, how in your mind, in your perspective, as you have sort of wandered through this, how do you propose that you find people? Because, well, two things. And I mean, one is, before we came on the show, I was sharing that I virtually have done what I have done essentially by myself throughout my life. And I'm frankly relieved to have a support system. And that's sort of how I see a board is I am the president of the board of the fire department on Lookout Mountain here. And there are term limits. I got about 2.5 years to go. But it's like, how do you find somebody to be the president of your board, or to have input, or to have your best interest at heart and while you're doing stuff, while at the same time, when somebody needs to say no, or somebody needs to say, well, let's go in a little different direction, or you might want to look at this. How do you do all of that? And how do you find people that actually have your best interest at heart? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah. It's, you know me, I'll tend to stray off the reservation pretty quickly, and
That's okay. Go.
and I'll probably, the other word I give myself is I overbuild for the neighborhood. So I can add, and I'm a systems thinker, which is why that's
right.
a trait of that is you think about, well, what is the whole system? So what you were just asking about is what's your recruiting process?
I think that,
right.
And also, what are you looking for?
Right. No, exactly. So we live our lives around here. It's everything's super intentional, right?
Right.
So a way to do it is to do a little bit of gap analysis. What am I not good at? And because I don't need to fill the room with clones, that doesn't help, right? So
right, if you're all not good at the same thing, then you're in trouble,
because then you're going to get confirmation bias. You're all going to go, yep, yep, the good idea there, boss. Yep, you go do that, right? No, in my opinion, what happens is we have friends in our life, and it starts with that. It's someone who you meet, and if your radar is lit, and mine is lit all the time, that someone comes on the radar and you're like, pay attention to the way you and I met, and then you start kind of looking at the skills, and you start looking at, boy, that person completes these other areas that because I'm so curious, they complete some of these other areas. That's kind of interesting. And it starts with friendship, in my opinion, I'm not
Mhm.
hiring someone. I don't, this isn't work. This is someone who deeply cares about your success in life, right? So
Right.
it may be that the group of people you have coffee with on Saturday morning is your
Mm.
they talk in presidential terms about having a kitchen cabinet, right?
Mhm.
It's my cabinet, which is like your board,
Mhm.
that are their advisors, and they're running their own shit, right? But you know that they're running some chunk of something that you don't need to pay attention to because you've got someone good.
Right.
And a kitchen cabinet is their advisors. So you can think about them in that way as well. So who were those people in your life? And if you don't have them, could you go start? And a simple way to do that would be, hey, I'm going to have coffee on Saturday, and I've been, with good buddy and a couple of people I think you'll like.
Mhm.
Oh, I mean, has anybody who's listening to this ever done that intentionally? I'm going to go bring together some people instead of going out and having a drink at night. Let's on
Right.
Saturday morning, let's just have a cup of coffee and talk about stuff and see how that goes. And you'll start to say, gotta get this thing that's really bugging me. I'm not sure which way to go. What do you
Mhm.
guys think? Da 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 da. And over time, there's going to be, I'm on a buddy of mine's personal board, and he'll call and say, I'm putting together a lunch. You're going to love the people. And at the lunch, he'll say, this is kind of where I've come since we had the last lunch.
Mhm.
And this is what I'm focusing on for the next, 6 months. It's usually twice a year. Huh? And then
Mm.
everybody, because the other thing about of this board is the relationship within that board, right? Because you have the common idea of this person you're there to advise, right?
Right.
And I don't have a vote, right? We're not voting on things, we're not approving things. But the idea is that you're surrounding yourself with wisdom and wit. And it might be the case where, well, you know what? I would read the draft of your book and give you notes. I'd do that for
Mm.
you, right? I would. God, this sounds kind of interesting. You're building a fence. I've never built a fence. Could I come over and help? I'd like to do that. I don't think we are good at asking for help.
That is so true. So let me share. Wow, you said a lot, Mark. Let me share. Yeah, it's like, okay,
Is that the title of the
I'm on
book?
board.
Said a lot, Mark.
Yeah, that's the title of a book. What I wonder is how many people, how many, in this case, mostly men will be listening to this, at least for now. How many, so direct question to the audience. How many of you would have an idea, perhaps, that if you presented that to a board, let's say, you know, one of the men in the nation asked, we were on their board, you and I, maybe one or two other people, and they would present an idea and we would give input that wasn't particularly what they were looking for.
Ideally, that's exactly what you want.
Exactly. And because again, if it's exactly what you're looking for, you don't need a board.
Right.
You don't need input.
Right.
My one of my questions is how many men would actually take the input in a clear, kind, humble way and go mess with it in a good way. So I
Isn't that
saw
the foundational promise of this show?
keep going.
The foundational promise of this show is that men are not going to take advice from another man, unsolicited advice from another man, especially if it was that, even if it's themselves. The premise of the show is we exist in a world where there's time travel, and we have come back to talk to our 15, 25, 35, 45-year-old selves
Yes.
and say, dude, we made it to 70. You did good job. However, you might not want to call that one back. You
Right.
might not need that experience, or you might want to do this, or pay attention to what John says at that dinner you're going to have on Thursday. Oh, and our question that I people ask about the show all the time, and I'll say, it's you. You can see you. You love you. And you tell me to pay attention. Yeah, that's all right, old man. I got this.
Right.
Right.
And yes, and even yes, and I mean it totally. Even at last week, I turned 72, and
Happy birthday.
thank you, sir. And one of my biggest lessons, and maybe this is a lesson of this, is one of my huge lessons is to take information that other people have given me where they have had a different experience than me, and to be able to take that and integrate that information into whatever it is I may or may not be looking for. Now, full disclosure, there is clearly a time in my life, and I can probably pick any 45, 46, 43, 51, where someone would give me a piece of information and I'd be sitting there going, yeah. But back here, I'm going, yeah, this person's like full of shit. I'm not, like I'm going to be really fucking nice to them. And probably nobody else in the audience has ever done that. So I'm just sharing that with you in case you stumble upon that.
That's an edge case. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, how many and how often are you actually willing to take in information, whether you agree with it or not, and let it settle and let it sink in and see what's in it for you? And because, and this I think is the value of the personal board that you're talking about, is it, and if people have watched us, you and I, interact before, they will clearly see that we come in different doors. They will
100%.
clearly see that we have had very different life experiences. So we've also had some that are very similar. And but it's like there's not a, it's like your life experience when you speak to something is incredibly valuable to me, because I really get to live two lives then. I get to live mine, and I get to live what you share about yours. If there's a third person, I get to live mine and what you share about yours and what they share about theirs. And part of I believe becoming mature and growing is actually being able to, however you want to label it, have a personal board of directors and actually listen. And listen in a way that you allow yourself to be affected.
So I want to respond to a bunch of things in there. You've heard me talk about listening loudly. That comes from, I borrowed that from a friend who, we hear that all the time. We've talked on the show about listening. So this is listening. It's also not judging. and I think this comes from, this has been pounded in my head through meditation, which is I'm going to observe with interest, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to
Mhm.
observe that I'm observing right now. I'm going to disassociate for a second. I'm going to watch myself, listen to this person who's honestly and sincerely trying to give me good feedback on this decision I've asked their input on, and I'm
Mhm.
not going to blow them off. In fact, I'm going to listen.
Right.
So I don't judge, and I do this other thing called noting, which is also a meditative thing. I'm going to note this input is just a fact, or it's an emotion. It made me feel something. I'm going to pay attention to both of those, right?
Right.
And and then by paying attention to both of those, I'm just going to log them. Thank you. Log them. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Huh. Wonder why I felt that way. Why did I feel threatened, or why did I feel defensive, or why did I feel inadequate, or why did I feel whatever those things are, right? Question,
Mhm.
a lot of those questions. The reason now I'm gonna go off a little tributary for a second.
Okay.
I'm I've always been interested in organizational development. How do how do teams work? Just it's a fascination of mine. Why do some work and some don't? And what are the commonalities around the ones that work? Currently, I am obsessed with understanding how Amazon has built their business and what are the things that they've done. And I have inside information, people I've had on my show, people I have in my life. There's
Mhm.
35 people on my LinkedIn who are now up there at Amazon, good friends in very high positions. So I've had a chance to observe it inside and out, but
Mhm.
it was only until this week when a buddy of mine said, just go read the book Working Backwards. And it's
Mm.
two SVPs. They were the guys in charge of, they built, they were Amazon Prime, Amazon Music, AWS, Alexa, big, this
Mhm.
is 10, 15 years ago. And what was the process by which an idea became a thing? Someone had an idea, hey, why don't we ship for free? Thank you,
Mm.
Alexa. They
Speaking of
live
which,
in my life.
that's perfect.
I'm going to choose to not edit that out. The
Well, actually, no, this is actually a perfect moment. What do you do when you're on a roll and you get interrupted?
that's a resiliency test.
Yeah.
That's a resiliency test because it's the same thing. I'm riding a bike and something hits me, and it's like, is it going to knock you over, or are you going to get back up?
Yeah.
And so
And so, yeah.
I'm mega resilient. So this book goes into why did Amazon work? Why does Amazon work?
Mm.
And what's interesting to me is that it tracks, so far I'm listening, I'm only 4 hours in. It's the second chapter. It's going to be a long ride, which is great. Um, but we did a show on this about core values and ethos, and what do you have, what's the rock that guides you? And that's how they start. They've got core values, and everybody that comes into their orbit gets judged by those core values, or they don't even
Mm.
get a second interview. Right.
Right.
you know but here's where I want to go with that, because I love studying, when we're trying to solve a problem in our own life, go study how other people have solved it, and then
Mhm.
and learn from that.
Mhm.
Well, one of the things they talk about is, the hiring process is around diversity of ideas and diversity of background, diversity of, you have a hiring bias. I'm gonna hire people who are like me because that is comfortable, right?
Mhm.
If I hire people that are not like me, like if I only hire contrarians, then that's going to be uncomfortable for me. That's not going to be a fun place to work. So in thinking about that, having someone in your crew who is contrarian, to your point, are they going to give me feedback that I'm going to listen to? I didn't want, what I really wanted is everybody to say yes, so I could just, because I'm going to go do it
Mhm.
anyway, right?
Right.
Or, I hadn't considered that at all. But that's what I want.
Right, because we can exactly. And there's a place in there. If someone's contrary, or what's their purpose? Because what I look for is, will somebody give me input with my best interest at heart? That.
This is not,
Because
we're not building an adversarial system. This isn't, I'm not building a debate team, right? That's not what this is about.
right.
This is a sounding board. There's a million words to describe this. The question I'm asking is, do you have such a capability in your life?
Exactly. And is that, and you mentioned the word diverse,
Yeah.
and is it's that a diverse set of people? Is that a diverse set of input? And here's one of the things that struck me, and I what you just shared about Amazon, I was not aware of until you just shared it. In the world of, in the natural world, in the wild world, we can tell the health of an environment by the diversity in that environment. If I walk out my front door and there's only one kind of bird, say I only see maybe a robin and a sparrow, and that's all the birds that I see in all year long. That will tell me that the environment outside my home is not very healthy. If I walk out my front door and see 40 to 50 different kinds of species of birds and subspecies, which is essentially what happens.
You live in the woods, dude.
Yeah. Well, and I live in the healthy
Yeah.
woods.
Yeah.
And what I really, one of the points here that I want to make is diversity is a sign of health.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talk, I mean, and that's sort of my thing is, mental health and emotional health. Getting diverse input with your best interest in mind from other people is a sign of health. And that's really a big deal. And choosing people to be on your personal board that can offer that to you is, it's like, there will probably be times where you're sort of going, oh, I wish I wouldn't have asked that question. Or I wish I wouldn't have asked for that input.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes in, it's like, oh, got it. That little piece of information that was not that comfortable to hear is the piece. It was the you know the keystone of what just needed to happen. And yeah, so um so
Yeah,
what we're
the trick, you said peace, and it made me think of a puzzle.
yes.
And it's recognizing that was the piece. Sometimes we're barreling through life so fast we don't see the piece.
Yes.
So in these situations where you're asking for some advice or some help or some counsel, or just let me throw this against the wall and see what sticks.
Mhm.
Pay attention.
Yeah, pay attention.
Hmm. Hmm. I can't think of a better way to end the show than that. Pay attention. That's it. That's the t-shirt for the show. We're gonna start doing t-shirts for the show.
I think that is perfect.
We'll have a t-shirt moment. Pay attention.
Right.
My good friend, I love you.
Love you very much. Thank you so much.